What if the people who raised you were the ones who hurt you the most? Not with fists, but with silence, with shame, with words that echoed years after they were said. In this video, we bring you 3 real stories where children walked away from their parents not out of rebellion, but out of survival. These stories challenge everything we think we owe to family. Right or so wrong, you decide. Story 1. The funeral she skipped. Emily's name wasn't listed in the obituary. When her mother passed away on a gray Wednesday morning in early spring, the local newspaper published a short paragraph about Linda Patterson. Loving mother and grandmother, devout churchgoer, remembered fondly by her family and friends. It included the names of her son, 2 grandkids, and even her neighbor. But not her daughter. And Emily didn't object. She read the announcement over her morning coffee, folded the paper in half, and placed it face down on the kitchen table. There were no tears, just silence. The same kind she had grown up with. The kind that filled a house like fog when something was wrong but no one dared name it. Emily had stopped visiting home a decade earlier. At first it was excuses, busy with school, then with work, then with life. But the truth was simpler. She felt physically ill every time she stepped foot in that house. The house where her mother controlled everything with a cold stare, where affection was conditional, where mistakes were weaponized, where I love you came only after shame, not before. Linda had never struck Emily, not once, but the wounds she left were deep, sharp words, strategic silence biting comparisons. You'll never be as pretty as your cousin. You always ruin things. Don't cry. Nobody cares about your feelings. Why are you so dramatic? Just like your father. When Emily was 14, she told her mother she wanted to study art. Linda laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Starving on the street suits your attitude." When Emily was 18 and accepted into a university 3 states away, Linda didn't congratulate her. She told her she was abandoning the family. So Emily left and never went back. Years passed. She built a life elsewhere, got a degree, found a quiet, small apartment, adopted a cat, spent holidays with friends who felt more like family than anyone tied to her by blood. She sent the occasional birthday card, replied to a few emails, but never initiated contact. Not once. Then one Tuesday night, her brother Michael called. "Mom's in the hospital," he said. "She had a stroke. It's bad." Emily listened, nodded, thanked him for telling her. She didn't ask for details. By morning, Linda was gone. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday. Michael texted her the address and time. He didn't say, "I hope you'll come." He didn't say she would have wanted you there. He just said, "You should know." Emily stared at the message for a long time. Not because she didn't know her answer, she did. She just didn't know how to say it out loud. She didn't go. That morning, she made pancakes, took a walk, watered her plants, lit a candle, sat in the quiet. The silence was different now. Not threatening, not cold. It was stillness, not suppression. But later that evening, the phone rang again. This time it was her aunt. "I hope you're proud of yourself," the woman spat. "Your own mother in the ground and you can't even show up to say goodbye. Shame on you." Emily tried to explain. Not defend herself, just explain that she didn't feel safe there, that she didn't think of Linda as a mother in the way people meant it, that she'd already said goodbye years ago in her own way. But the words didn't matter. "You're cruel," her aunt said. "She wasn't perfect, but she loved you. You're going to regret this one day." Michael stopped responding to texts after that. Cousins unfollowed her online. An old friend from high school sent her a DM, "I don't know what happened between you and your mom, but not going to her funeral, that's next level cold." Emily didn't answer. Because how do you explain trauma to people who never saw it? How do you tell them that some funerals don't deserve flowers? That closure doesn't always mean showing up. Weeks went by, then months. Some days she felt light, freed. No more wondering if she should call, no more guilt for not trying harder, no more second-guessing. Other days she felt hollow, a daughter without a mother, a family name erased from a list of mourners, a face not missed. She saw a therapist, started journaling. Didn't talk much about the funeral, but often about the years before it. The little moments, the quiet, cutting words, the absence of comfort. It's okay to grieve the mother you never had, the therapist told her once. Emily nodded, tears welling not for Linda, but for the girl who had tried so hard to earn love from someone who didn't know how to give it. One day, while walking through a local bookstore, Emily saw a card in the sympathy section. It read, "Sometimes the goodbye we need isn't at the funeral, it's in the freedom that follows." She bought it, taped it above her desk, didn't send it to anyone. Was she heartless? Or finally at peace? Right or so wrong? You decide. Story 2. The Father Who Claimed He Changed. Daniel learned early that silence could be survival. Growing up with a father like Glenn taught him that the safest way to exist was to be invisible. Glenn didn't hit, he didn't drink, he didn't abandon his family in the conventional ways. But he cut with words sharper than knives and praised only with poison laced behind compliments. "You're lucky your mother puts up with you. Try not to screw this up like everything else. You're smart for someone who's not really good at anything." When Daniel brought home a B+ in math, Glenn asked why it wasn't an A. When Daniel got picked for the debate team, Glenn said, "Hope you're better at that than sports." When Daniel asked for advice on college, Glenn said, "Pick something that pays. You're not passionate enough to do anything else." His mother rarely intervened. Sometimes she'd sigh. Once or twice she whispered, "He means well," but most of the time she just kept washing dishes. By high school, Daniel had stopped speaking at the dinner table. He learned how to anticipate Glenn's moods, knew which shirts would avoid comments, which topics were off limits. He got good at disappearing, and when he turned 18, he disappeared for real. He went to college on scholarships and part-time jobs, studied computer science, sent the occasional holiday card, answered his mother's texts, but he never called home just to talk. In his 20s, Daniel started therapy. He didn't call it that. At first told friends he was just sorting through some things, but in those sessions, he began to say out loud the words he had never dared to think clearly. "My father made me feel small. I was never good enough for him. I think he broke something in me." His therapist said, "Naming it is the first act of freedom." So Daniel kept naming it, and he stopped responding to his father altogether. Years passed. He got a job at a growing tech firm, moved to a different state, fell in love, started hiking, built a life filled with people who didn't criticize him for breathing too loudly or folding towels the wrong way. He didn't miss Glenn. And then one day he got a letter. It arrived in a plain white envelope, handwritten return address. Inside 3 short paragraphs from Glenn. "I know I wasn't the best father. I've been doing some thinking, some church counseling, and I realize I might have been too hard on you. I'd like to talk. Maybe we can fix things. I've changed." Daniel stared at the paper for a long time. He hadn't heard from his father in almost 6 years. Not on birthdays, not when he'd landed his promotion, not when his mother passed away the year before. Glenn had sent flowers to the funeral, but no call. Now suddenly he'd changed. Daniel didn't respond, not out of anger, but because he didn't know how to trust a man who had once made him feel like a burden for existing. Could change be real if the damage was never acknowledged beyond vague phrases? Weeks later, another letter came. This one was longer, more apologetic. Glenn referenced memories, ones Daniel remembered too, but with very different emotions. The fishing trip where Glenn mocked him for being afraid to bait a hook. The science fair. Glenn dismissed as a waste of time. The day Daniel graduated college and Glenn only said, "Just don't screw up the real world." Now Glenn said he didn't realize how hurtful those things were, that he thought he was toughening Daniel up, that he'd made mistakes. Daniel's fiancée asked if he wanted to talk to him. He didn't answer. That night, Daniel opened an old file on his computer, a digital journal he'd started during therapy. He scrolled through entries, reread the ones about his childhood, the panic attacks, the shame that wrapped around him like wet cement, the dreams he'd had of telling Glenn off, the ache when he finally stopped wanting his approval. He'd worked so hard to rebuild the boy Glenn had fractured. Would opening the door again undo all of that? One more letter came. It was a birthday card. Simple. No note beyond still proud of you. Still hoping. Daniel folded the card closed. He didn't throw it away. He didn't call. He didn't write back. He simply placed it in a drawer next to an unopened envelope from 2 months before. A few weeks later, he sat with his therapist and asked, "Do people like him really change?" The therapist didn't give an answer. Just asked, "Do you need him to—" Daniel didn't know. He still doesn't. Does a father deserve forgiveness just because he finally says, "I'm sorry," or is walking away the real act of healing? Right or so wrong? You decide. Story 3. Fix the family. At first, they said it was just discipline. When Ava was a child, her parents, Thomas and Marlene, believed in raising her right. That meant rigid rules, public shame, and words sharper than belts. They didn't hit. They didn't need to. Their favorite weapons were their voices, and Ava learned quickly how damaging a whisper could be. "You're embarrassing. Why are you so dramatic all the time? Maybe if you weren't so difficult, we wouldn't have to yell. We give you everything and you repay us with this." She was an only child, and that made things worse. There was no one to share the weight. Every failure fell squarely on her. Every mistake was magnified. Even good moments came with conditions. Get an A. Why not an A+? Win an award. Don't let it go to your head. Cry. Go to your room and come back when you can act normal. There were no bedtime stories, no "I'm proud of you," no safe space. By the time Ava was 14, she had mastered the art of silence. She spoke only when necessary, never raised her voice, and never ever disagreed. Her body shrank into corners. Her spirit curled inwards. She never brought friends over. When people asked about her parents, she smiled and said they were strict but loving. It was easier than trying to explain. College was her escape. A small university 2 states away accepted her with a full scholarship. She packed light. Her parents didn't offer to help with moving. They simply said, "Don't mess this up." She didn't. She flourished. Surrounded by people who encouraged her, professors who listened, and roommates who hugged without hesitation, Ava began to understand what normal could feel like. The tension in her chest loosened. Her voice came back. She didn't go home for the holidays. At first, she lied, said she had work or couldn't afford the trip. But as years passed, the distance became honest. She didn't go back because she didn't want to. And every time her parents called, she kept it brief, cordial, flat. But flat wasn't enough for them. When Ava turned 26, she finally moved into a small apartment of her own. A cozy space filled with plants, light and quiet joy. She had a job she liked, a cat she adored, friends who made her laugh. Then came the knock on the door. Not a letter, not a call. Her parents, in her city, unannounced. She opened the door stunned and saw Thomas standing stiffly with a suitcase and Marlene holding a box of framed photos. "We've decided to come stay for a while," her mother said, stepping past her. Ava stood frozen. "What?" "To fix the family," her father added. "We've let this go on long enough. You're not too old to be reminded of your place." That night, she sat across from them at her own kitchen table, listening to them dissect her life. Her furniture was cheap. Her cat was filthy. Her framed artwork was ungrateful nonsense. And her friends, they assumed, were probably all confused about who raised you. She asked them once why they were really there. Her mother looked at her like she'd asked something offensive. "Because family matters," she said. "We're here to repair the damage you caused." Ava didn't sleep that night. The apartment felt smaller. The air felt heavier. That old, familiar panic crept back in tight in her ribs, cold in her stomach. She hadn't felt it in years. In the morning, she made coffee for herself only. Her parents sat on the couch waiting. "We're not leaving," her father said calmly, "until you learn how to be part of this family again." Ava looked at them, looked at the door, then walked over, opened it, and said, "You need to go." They laughed. She didn't. It wasn't dramatic. No yelling, no final blowout, just quiet certainty. They didn't leave right away, but she called a friend. That friend came over, and with that presence, that witness her parents saw, they had lost control. Thomas grumbled. Marlene muttered. But they left, and for the first time, Ava locked the door on them, not from them. Days later, she received a voicemail. "You've ruined this family," her father said. "You'll regret this when you're old and alone," her mother added. "You're ungrateful. You were always ungrateful." Ava didn't save the message. She didn't block the number either. She just let it sit. Now Ava is 29. She's still in the same apartment, the same job, the same cat. But something's different. There's a picture frame on her shelf now, a photo of her and her college roommate on graduation day. No family in sight, just smiles. Real ones. She calls that her new origin story. Was she abandoning her parents? Or finally protecting herself? Right or so wrong? You decide. Some choices aren't loud. They're quiet, painful, and often misunderstood even by those closest to us. If stories like these make you pause, reflect, or see things differently, you're not alone. Subscribe for more real stories that challenge what we think we know about family.